Human Health 101. Optimize your human experience. Achieve your ideal body composition. Manage your hunger, cravings, and energy. Dominate in the gym, in your sport, in your life. Experience freedom from random aches, pains, rashes, gut rot, metabolic woes, and more. Take a journey through evolutionary biology, biochemistry, and nutritional science and uncover takeaway solutions to help you live awesome. That's going to be our subject for today. Strap on your thinking helmets and let's get to work. The new normal for human species. Let's talk about human health. Think about your own health. Think about the health of your immediate circle of friends and family. Think outside of that circle to your larger group of acquaintances. Now envision the breadth of the population, the people around you, the different people you see every day, at the coffee shop, on the train, at the grocery store, etc. What do you see? How many seem effortlessly healthy and happy? Tune into their body's needs and signals. How many of those people seem to be living an optimal human experience? Now, how many of them appear outwardly to be suffering under the weight, oftentimes literally, of poor health, of disease? How many seem to be lost and bewildered as to how they possibly could have strayed so far away from health and from what to do to get back to it? How many of you feel this way? Isn't it fascinating to observe how many members of the same species can be living such a vastly different existence? In what other species of the animal kingdom do you see this incredible diversity in the expression of health? Dolphins all look, behave, eat, move, and play relatively the same as one another. Foxes are rarely overweight and out of shape, with sore knees and bad backs. You've likely never seen an antelope roaming the rangelands popping antacids to help with digestion. Animals are designed to survive, thrive, evolve, and adapt. They're designed to be nimble, agile, strong, and to endure. But the human animal, increasingly, isn't doing any of these things. So what happened? This is part of what we'll be talking about today. We're going to take a step back, way back before the trillion-dollar health industry stepped in to try and fail to make us better, but to who we were before we became fat, sick, and bewildered species we are today. We'll toe dip into evolutionary biology, biochemistry, exercise science, and nutrition science to uncover clues that can help to bring us back to the badass creatures we're designed to be. Ever seen an old, grainy black and white photograph of your great-great-grandparents? Were they overweight? Did any of them have diabetes or heart disease? Do you know how they died? Old age, accident, infectious disease? Back when we were a younger and healthier species, we quite literally lived long and dropped dead. That is to say that, presuming a person could make it through life without a devastating infectious disease or accident, the way people die was simply by getting old and living to the end of their life. As recently as a few generations ago, people were not dying of epidemic chronic diseases like we see today. Something has been happening to our species. The humans of today spend much of their lives battling illness and premature death. Let's start this session by having a little bit of real talk around who we are today and why we're just so much less well now than we have been in our evolutionary history. Here's a short list of some of the modern diseases that our culture is currently battling: heart disease, stroke, diabetes, obesity, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, autoimmune disease, irritable bowel disease, thyroid dysfunction, pancreatitis, GERD. There's more. From the Wikipedia lifestyle diseases, and quote, lifestyle diseases are defined as diseases linked with the way people live their lives. This is commonly caused by alcohol, drug, and smoking abuse, as well as a lack of physical activity and unhealthy eating. Diseases that impact on our lifestyle are heart disease, stroke, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. The diseases that appear to increase in frequency as countries become more industrialized and people live longer. They can include Alzheimer's disease, arthritis, asthma, cancer, chronic liver disease, chronic obstruction pulmonary disease, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, metabolic syndrome, chronic renal fatigue. The list continues. If you don't have one of these illnesses currently, then you most certainly know someone who does. You may have even lost someone important to you to one of these diseases. Your ancestors, the ones in the grainy black and white photo, did not have to worry about these diseases. They were so incredibly rare, in many cases non existent, even as recently as 3 or 4 generations ago, that they didn't even pop up on the radar. In 1900, the top 3 causes of death in the United States were pneumonia, influenza, tuberculosis, and diarrhea. Communicable diseases accounted for about 60% of all deaths. In 1900, heart disease and cancer were ranked number 4 and 8 respectively. Since the 1940s, the majority of deaths in the United States have resulted from heart disease, cancer, and other degenerative diseases. And by the late 1900s or 1990s, degenerative diseases accounted for more than 60% of all deaths. Metabolic syndrome. Sometimes referred to as Syndrome X, metabolic syndrome is a pandemic that is quietly plaguing the developed world. Metabolic syndrome is not itself a disease. It's a collection of modern diseases that are so symptomatic, interwoven, and increasingly common that they have been lumped together under this category and given a name. This helps doctors and other health professionals to diagnose patients, and that's about it. These diseases are all incredibly new to humans' evolutionary history. We can trace their origins back 3 or 4 generations. Almost none of these conditions existed previous to that, at least not at a high enough frequency that doctors had to come up with a collective name for them. Modern epidemic health struggles. Even if you do not have a diagnosed metabolic disease, how many of us struggle with symptoms of unwellness day in and day out? How many of us have decided it must just be a part of getting older, that we must have a genetic glitch passed down from mom or dad? That this general unwellness is our cross to bear. We simply live with these feelings of general unwellness, day in and day out. We have not accepted them as our new normal. We have accepted them as our new normal. They're not. I know this seems a little gloomy, but let's get into some of the good stuff. Some of the things that you can do to turn this around for you. Absolute bewilderment. Possibly one of the greatest assaults that modern humans face with regard to their health and wellness isn't 100% bewilderment as to how we got here or what to do about it. Do you feel like you've completely lost touch with what to eat or how to move? The health and fitness industry is a multi-hundred-billion-dollar industry for a reason. It's gotten out of hand. Everywhere you look, there's conflicting information about what to do. Portion control, calorie counts, if it fits your macros, meal plans, expensive diet programs. None of it appears to be working, at least not in the long term, not sufficiently enough to get us back to who we are designed to be. We can continue to hear statistics, much like those shared here so far, about how we are sicker and fatter than ever, but what we really need is an understanding of how this happened, biochemically, and what to do to get back to the humans we once were. In an effort to simplify, sometimes it's easier just to go back to our roots. Our evolutionary biology what we are designed to be. Shown here are two members of a modern hunter-gatherer tribe, modern enough that they were able to have their photograph taken. Despite the absence of ab roller spin classes and BCA supplements, they managed to stay in incredible good shape. Depending on where your beliefs lie on the spectrum of evolution or creation, we may be as old as 2.5 million years or as young as 2,000. Either way, there's no denying that the human animal today is vastly different from what it was generations ago. A human is designed to be strong enough to withstand difficult pressures in order to continue to survive and evolve. Food scarcity, predation, infection, assaults put upon us by our environment. Life is much easier for us now, but stepping back and relating our current health situation to that of our ancestors helps us to simplify diet, nutrition, and lifestyles. How is a human meant to move, eat, and live? Evolutionary pressure. The two main pressures humans faced before modern civilization were starvation and predator danger. These dangers of extinction were challenges we had to face and learn to overcome as a species. The knowledge of how not to die was passed down through the generations, and the human race thrived to the point that it soon found itself perched atop the food chain. In our current life, we simply don't have the same dangers of extinction. Life has become vastly more comfortable for humans, and the lack of pressure has ground our evolution to a halt. We can live an unhealthy life with no evolutionary penalty. It's relatively easy for us to make these bad choices and continue to live. We may be overweight, we may not feel well, we may even be diagnosed with a metabolic disease, but as a species, the pressure is off. We've simply stopped trying not to die. Not only are we safely out of the way of predators, but even the threat of undernourishment has been remedied by rendering the ability to access food and food-like items virtually effortlessly. There's no pressure to make the right choices to support our continued evolution as a species. We become a sedentary, fat, and sick animal. Here's some statistics for you. Obesity, more than 1/3, that's 36.5% of the U.S. adults have obesity. Diabetes, the prevalence of diagnosed diabetes in the U.S. increased by 382% from 1988 to 2014. That's insane. Almost 30 million children and adults in the United States have diabetes. 86 million Americans have prediabetes. 1.4 million Americans are diagnosed with diabetes every year, 1 every 23 seconds. Cancer, estimated number of new cancer cases, and this is from 2017, 1,688,780. Estimated number of cancer deaths in the U.S., again 2017, 600,920. So what the heck happened? How did we get to where we are now? How did we undo our human badassery? The agricultural revolution. We started just as any animal, learning survival by adapting. Then we started to get smart. We organized, we had to. Our population was exploding, and we needed to figure out a way to support the exponential growth of our species. Food, which was at the one time just another survival necessity like oxygen, became something we needed to take ownership of, mechanize, control. We began domesticating and growing our own food, plants and animals. We found ways to make this food production increasingly efficient, achieving higher yields. We started to base our diet on these cheap, fast, and easy fuels. Things went downhill quickly in evolutionary terms. Agriculture worked to feed our growing population, but we had to square peg round hole food choices that, yes, were easy to grow and harvest and mill into flour, but no, did not resemble what we'd grown up with for the millennia that preceded. The agricultural revolution happened about 10,000 years ago, give or take. This sounds like a long time, but relative to how long we've been evolving, it's simply a tiny blip in our evolutionary radar. If human evolution were a football field, the agricultural revolution would represent zero point 0.4 yards, with the rest of human history making up the remaining 96.6. Dr. Jared Diamond, evolutionary biologist, physiologist, Pulitzer Prize winning professor of geography at UCLA, and author of Guns, Germs, and Steel, goes so far as to say that agriculture was, quote, the worst mistake in the history of the human race, and that, quote, we're still struggling with the mess into which agriculture has tumbled us, and it's unclear whether we can solve it. Pre and post ag stats. Life expectancy went from 26 to 19. Life expectancy at birth in the pre-agriculture community was about 26 years, but in the post-agriculture community, it was 19 years. So these episodes of nutritional stress and infectious disease were seriously affecting their ability to survive. Height changed. Males went from 5'9" to, on average, 5'3". Females 5'5" to 5 feet. Skeletons from Greece and Turkey show that the average height of hunter-gatherers toward the end of the Ice Age was a generous 5'9" for men, 5'5" for women. With the adoption of agriculture, height crashed, and by 3000 BC had reached a low of only 5'3" for men, 5 foot for women. By classical time, heights were very slow on the rise again, but modern Greeks and Turks have still not regained the average height of their distant ancestors. Government food suggestions. What could possibly go wrong? In the 1960s, the USDA and other national government agencies stepped in to help us understand how to eat. This is one version of the U.S. food pyramid, but most developed nations have something similar. Important to remember that USDA stands for United States Department of Agriculture. This government agency is not to be confused with USFDA, the Food and Drug Administration, which is responsible for ensuring the safety of food and drug. The food pyramid and every iteration of it before and since came directly from the agriculture industry, who has a financial interest in how much of what America eats. In this version, we can see that fruits, vegetables have moved to the base of the pyramid. This is the spot grains previously occupied for decades. Most can agree that humans need to eat more vegetables. That's the common ground that just about any nutritional or health dogma can agree upon. The second and third most prominent groups include agriculture commodities, grains, and dairy. The USDA would absolutely love for us to eat 7 to 9 servings of 2 of its most valuable commodities every day. Despite how well these food items support the bottom line of the Department of Agriculture, biochemically they do not support the optimal fueling of humans. We'll explore the specifics around why our food pyramid suggestions are nearly all wrong for us later on in this presentation. For now, simply understand that the original food pyramid was created in the 1960s, approximately 3 to 4 generations ago, right when the health of our species began to go off the rails. At this point in time, most people know that there's an obesity crisis on our hands. Truly, obesity is just one of many concurrent health crises we're dealing with as a species. So what caused that spike right around 1980? Big Macs? When faced with these kinds of statistics, most people declare fast food and processed food to be the problem. Those types of foods are definitely not optimal human fuel. But the definition of processed food could be explored a bit more deeply. One might suggest that any hybridized grain milled into flour and combined with other natural and unnatural ingredients should easily be considered processed food, like bread. But the sharp spike shown in this graph has another contributing factor. Any guesses? Right around the 1980s is when the low-fat, low-calorie diet dogma came into popularity. So to recap, at this point in the presentation, we've got the USDA telling us that their commodity crops are our most important food groups. Now we've got the medical and fitness establishment telling us that carbohydrates are our most important macronutrient. And we've suddenly got a pretty significant blip on our fat and sick radar. That simply cannot be coincidence. Insulin, the master metabolic hormone. Insulin is the master metabolic hormone. Its job is to facilitate fueling the body. When we digest food down into fuel, insulin's role is to bring that fuel into the cells. If the cells don't need or want it, insulin's role is to encourage that fuel to be stored on the body as fat. You can see why a diet-obsessed culture like ours really should bone up on the biochemical role of insulin. Indeed, if you are looking to keep your body well fueled and body fatness at bay, understanding how to keep insulin working properly is a very important place to start. When insulin function is impaired, things become very metabolically difficult. This image represents what the casual rise and fall of blood glucose and insulin should look like. Insulin simply responds to blood glucose in kind. When there is a moderate amount of free glucose in the blood, a moderate amount of insulin is secreted to bring that glucose into the cells. The ideal expression of blood glucose and insulin is these gentle waves. When insulin function is working optimally, it doesn't feel like anything. It doesn't feel like hangry or afternoon diabetes, that snoozy, snacky situation that has you running to the vending machine at the office every day at 3 p.m. Hangry. Problems arise when those blood glucose levels spike to very high levels. When we eat too much, too frequently, or simply consume too much glucose in the form of carbohydrate or sugar. When we have more free glucose than our cells need. Hangry is not cute, and it is not a normal hunger response. Hangry is a result of your brain panicking because it mistakenly believes that the cells have no fuel. In fact, there is plenty of free fuel, but the cells have become resistant to it. In a manner of speaking, that free glucose bounces off cells and is converted to fat and stored on the body, theoretically for later use. The only problem is our bodies have no incentive to mobilize stored fuel because we keep the sugar train chugging. We just keep eating more and more carbohydrate and sugar. So the body wonders why it even needs to bother mobilizing the stored fuel. Who are you when you're hangry? This is a legitimate 2017 Snickers product strategy driven by their "You're Not You When You're Hungry" ad campaign. These candy bar wrappers celebrate the symptoms of insulin resistance. What's really troubling is that eating a Snickers bar when you're hangry is about the worst thing you can do. Insulin resistance. The cycle of insulin resistance, you get hungry, or more accurately, hangry. Hangry is a very urgent, chaotic expression of hunger triggered by the fact that your cells are undernourished and your brain has decided starvation is well underway. Hangriness encourages you to find the fastest form of blood glucose you can get your hands on: chips, muffins, cookies, carbs. Those carbohydrates break down very quickly into glucose, flooding your bloodstream with sugar. As it's designed to do, insulin responds in kind. A large dump of insulin is secreted into the bloodstream to take up all that sugar. Insulin takes up the glucose and travels to the cells to deliver it, but there's just so much sugar and insulin knocking on the cell's doors that they've locked up shop. The specific receptors to the cells where insulin normally docks in order to release glucose into the cell is closed for business. The cell only needs so much fuel, and there simply is too much. Feeling dejected, insulin figures that you must have eaten all those potato chips for a reason. You were starving, so it carts the sugar over to the liver, where it's converted into fat and stored on your body for later. Meanwhile, the cells, who've slammed their insulin receptors shut in defiance, are still hungry. They trigger an urgent hunger signal to the brain. You get hangry. The cycle continues. Insidious weight gain ensues. This is sometimes referred to being overfed and undernourished because we've confused the insulin pathway and broken it so badly that the body has lost its ability to fuel itself. Meanwhile, we're still eating piles of food. It's just being stored on the body as fat, usually around the midsection for easy access. Insulin resistance now has a clinical name. Has anyone heard of prediabetes? Other things making us fat and sick as a species. Diet isn't the only thing that changed drastically in our recent evolution. We've also fallen prey to lifestyle assaults like chronic stress, little to no downtime, toxic load, poor quality sleep, blue light, synthetic diminished social connections, all of which contribute to our weight gain. Conventional wisdom has continued to fail us. Eat right and exercise. That's what we were told we had to do to maintain our health. If it were that easy, we would be experiencing our current health. Would we be experiencing our current health crisis? On a more personal note, how many people here have tried to eat right and exercise, only to have it not work for them? It's not working. We're told to follow a food pyramid fueled by agriculture. We're encouraged to make a chaotic and inefficient macronutrient our primal fuel source. We got fat and sick very quickly. This triggered the multi-$100 billion health and fitness industry, which continues to contrive and pile on even more conventional wisdom that simply hasn't worked. Low fat, calorie deprivation, food groups, exercise trends and fads, diet programs. I'm sure you guys remember all of these. Our genetic destiny. How can we get back to where we once were? We can see that humans were at one time naturally much healthier than we are today. We can see that much of what has made us sick is well within our control. So are we just too far gone as a species, or can we turn back the clock? Nature versus nurture. Where our health is concerned, we may actually not be slaves to our genetic destiny. This comes straight from our evolutionary history. Quite sufficiently, we would not be where we are today if we did not have the ability to influence how our genes express themselves. Our evolutionary history is rife with selection pressures, assaults, and challenges that we had to adapt to. The malleability of our genetic expression is what enabled us to roll with the punches of evolution. A clear example of selection pressure at work is seen in humans who migrated north into Europe and Scandinavia and developed a lightening of skin pigment in only a few thousand years. This allowed them to absorb more vitamin D in less time than a darker skinned person. This was essential for survival in the sun challenged climates. Those living in the northern latitudes were fortunate to have this light skin gene mutation were able to survive and reproduce, while those with genes for darker skin were far less successful at survival and reproduction at higher latitudes. Over time, this light skin genetic mutation wound up being the preferred genetic expression for that northern culture, and you still see it to this day. Genes are the messengers that signal your cells to function every moment of every day. They react to short-term acute threats to our survival and respond accordingly. Your short-term survival is of the gene's immediate concern because it stands to reason that protecting you in the short term will then keep you alive for the long term. Some genetic influences are fixed: height, hair color, etc. You may have a familiar predisposition to diabetes, obesity, heart disease, thyroid disease. However, these genes do not manifest unless they are expressed. Predisposition plus expression equals genetic disease presentation. Return to glory. At this point, we've learned some of the things that have afflicted our species with poor health. and we've learned that we have more control than we may have thought in terms of what type of influence we have on our expression of health. All we need to do is make some simple shifts, returning to our habits, nutrition, movements, and behaviors that our ancestors knew, which helped them to achieve almost effortless lifelong health. Choose your fuel. Contrary to popular belief, glucose, sugar or carbohydrate, is not our body's only source of fuel. In fact, when we look back at our evolutionary history, it is plain to see that carbohydrate isn't even our preferred fuel source. Fat is. Carbohydrates equal batteries. Batteries offer a quick, cheap, and portable source of fast fuel, but when batteries die, they die. You achieve a sudden failure of your fuel source, and the only way to replenish it is to go and get more batteries from the vending machine in the form of corn chips or Skittles. Fat, gasoline. Gasoline is a slow burn fuel that sustains. What's more, gasoline empties slow. You can keep your eye on the fuel gauge and refuel before you run out. When people say fat keeps you fuller longer, this is what they mean. Fat is a slow burn, sustainable fuel. It satiates hunger for much longer than batteries do, so you can have actual control over your hunger and appetite instead of the other way around. Human food, plants, and animals. You can't go wrong with the foods that exist in nature. For the majority of our evolutionary history, humans ran their bodies primarily on a diet of animal proteins and the fats that came with them, and plants. A little bit of starchy tuber, fruit, virtually no grains. This really worked for us. It worked so well that they had almost effortless lifelong health right up until 3 or 4 generations ago. When you transition your fuel source away from carbohydrate and toward fat, many things change. You achieve stable energy because your batteries aren't dying every 3 hours. Your appetite becomes a whisper, not a roar. Your mood stabilizes too. Hangry isn't cute on anyone. Effortless weight management. Sugar isn't bouncing off your insulin-resistant cells and storing as fat. Tissue repair, longevity. Once the body has adequate fuel and our metabolic processes can be ticking like a clock, chronic self-inflicted metabolic disease can be stopped in its tracks. We can begin to return to that long-living human animal whose body was designed to live long and then drop dead. Unhealthy fats. We've all heard about unhealthy fats, but in order to declare a fat healthy, you first need to understand which fats are unhealthy and why. Bad fats. Industrial, heavily processed seed and grain oils that promote inflammation, aging, cancer, like partially hydrogenated, processed packaged frozen fast food. These cause oxidation, inflammation, free radicals, damage to cell membranes. Excess PUFA, omega-6, vegetable oils, processed foods. These fats are pro-inflammatory and oxidated. Healthy fats. Once you know why bad fats are bad, you can more greatly appreciate why healthy fats are so good. Good. Satiety, anti-inflammatory, preferred human fuel source, cell membrane component, hormone creation and support. These type of fats like omega-3, saturated fats, monosaturated, coming from avocado, macadamia nuts, olive oil, saturated fats from meat and fish, fowl, eggs, coconut products, butter. Omega-3 comes from oily, cold water fish, grass-fed meats, organic eggs, fish oil supplements. These are the fats that we should be consuming. Grains are nutritionally unnecessary. This is open for discussion. People have a problem with hearing this. However, if we look at this, talk about anti-nutrients with this, the lectins in the grains, we find that they actually take up more nutrients than they are giving us. There's nothing nutritionally urgent in grains that you can't get from another more bioavailable, less anti-nutrient source. And that goes for legumes too. Beans, sometimes considered to be a plant-based protein source, are actually dense carbohydrate. 1 cup of beans equals 10 grams of carbohydrate, 6 grams of protein. 1 cup of chopped chicken breast, 0 grams of carb, 300 or 35 grams of protein. In order to match the protein quantity of chicken by consuming beans, you'd be getting 58 grams of carbohydrate with your 35 grams of protein, not to mention the anti-nutrients, and not to mention that beans are an incomplete protein. To complete the protein, you'd have to add another source of plant-based protein like grains, more carbs. So you might be able to eat bread without discomfort, but you could have had broccoli, a very nutrient-dense source of awesome nutrition without the anti-nutrient compounds. 2 examples of batteries. Which is healthier and why? Gumdrops are obviously junk food, but why? Because they are made of sugar and have no nutrition to speak of. Remember that all carbohydrate breaks down into sugar in the bloodstream immediately upon digestion. Your body has no idea if that sugar came from gumdrops, oatmeal, or 36 grain sprouted organic bread. With that in mind, oatmeal is sugar too. And bread is also a grain packed with anti-nutrients. In terms of nutrition, the nutrients found in grains are bound by anti-nutrients, which, by all accounts, render them mostly unavailable to our bodies for use. Candy, quick insulin hit, return normal, no anti-nutrients. Whole grains, prolonged insulin drip, pro-inflammatory. I know what you're thinking, but at least oatmeal has fiber. Where will I get my fiber if I don't eat grains? Fiber. Where will you get your fiber? Some of the same place those strapping muscular and, we can presume, gastrointestinally regular hunter-gatherers did in the absence of cereal grains, veggies. Grains have fiber, but that's about all they have going for them. Truly, the fiber from grains does little, apart from adding bulk to our excrement. Fibrous veggies, on the other hand, are packed with full of amazing bioavailable nutrition. Exercise is good for you. Let's talk about why exercise is good for us, but ineffective for weight loss management. Conventional wisdom led us down the calories in, calories out path, and we took that to mean that as long as we're burning, we were earning. Exercise became a means to undo our food choices. It hasn't worked. As we've learned in this presentation, the state of our beach body goes much deeper than just avoiding conventional junk food and then burning everything off at the gym for an hour a day. 80% of our body composition success is determined by how we eat. This ultimately comes down to insulin, the master metabolic hormone, as well as dialing down toxic load by avoiding anti-nutrient grains and unhealthy fats, those quasi-poisonous industrial seed oils. Besides which, the exercise to lose weight paradigm is inherently flawed. Increase exercise, increase the appetite, eat less, move more. It is an ideological set of behaviors, metabolically. And then there's this. Chronic cardio overtraining equals consistently elevated cortisol, chronic stress, stubborn abdominal weight. As we've already learned, chronic stress is one of the primary lifestyle factors that has contributed to our cultural state of growing poor health. Either way, the sooner we can disconnect weight management beliefs from exercise, the sooner we can liberate ourselves from exercise obsession and spending way too many of the precious hours of our life in the gym. The fitness folly. The fitness industry jumped in to try to solve the problems created by poor nutritional guidance we were given. It was determined that all you needed to do in order to maintain a healthy body composition was earn and burn. All the calories you've eaten in a day, and a multi-hundred billion dollar industry was born. Generations of diet and fitness programs were built off of this belief. But look around. It didn't work. To this day, we still see millions of people in gyms across the world strapping into their Fitbits, chronicling every burnt calorie, and the obesity epidemic rages on. Why? The expression of movement is all wrong for the way humans evolved to move. Moving slowly, sprinting occasionally, lifting heavy things, playing. These are the things that we should be doing. How to optimize your human experience. Isn't it liberating to consider that much of our expression of health is within our control? The disease states and unwellness symptoms listed earlier on can be influenced negatively or positively by our diet, our lifestyle, our behaviors, and exposures. That this is actually in our hands. The hard part is taking responsibility for the fact that our current level of poor health may have been partly self-inflicted. But as soon as we can own that piece and move past it, the sooner we can begin the metabolic and genetic reparations that can bring us back to what we were meant to be. We aren't even talking just about health or about lifestyle change here. We're talking about optimizing your human experience of being human. It has been suggested that it takes about 21 days of consistent new habits to begin to see a change in the expression of metabolic disease. What can you do right now for the next 3 weeks to positively influence your health? First things first is a mind shift. Believe that you have the power to moderate the expression of your genetic destiny. Be open to self-experimentation. Rather than listening to the masses, listen to your body. Remember that the conventional wisdom is what got us here in the first place. Why not go a little unconventional? Pantry raid and restock. Now we know what foods and fuels do not support the optimal human experience. So go home from here and get those out of your house. Ditch the sad food sources, grains, sugars, bad fats, anything processed. Don't forget the beverages. Repopulate your fridge and cupboards with human food. Load up your pantry and fridge with these new, really old, food staples. Plants, meat, fish, fowl, eggs, nuts, seeds, some fruit. A few words on fruit. Nutrient dense but also high in sugar. Can contribute to insulin dumping. So use moderation and consider fruit a treat. After 21 days of less to no fruit, your palate will change and fruit will taste super sweet. Kind of like nature's Skittles. Choose high antioxidant, low glycemic fruit whenever possible, like berries. Your new food pyramid. Number 1, vegetables. High in fiber, full of nutrition. Number 2, animal protein. Protein and fat offer satiety and fuel to help optimize insulin function. Number 3, don't feel you need to maintain mainline fat sources, but just your veggies. Cook in healthy oils and choose fatty cuts of protein to get your awesome healthy fats into you. Number 4, moderation foods. Fruit, which is high fat dairy, if tolerant, safe starches and carbs, dark chocolate as a treat. Number 5, supplements, herbs and spices. These can enhance your health experience, but actual human food is the greatest needle mover. Fill your fridge in these ratios. Fill your plate in these ratios. Fill your body with approved human food and feel your health flourish. Mind your carbohydrates, or at least have an awareness of how many you're eating. Treat your insulin response with due care and respect. Remember, it's the master metabolic hormone that decides if you get fueled or get fat. Become aware of how much carbohydrate is in everyday foods and how much total you're getting each day. Our carbohydrate curve suggests that even dropping daily carbohydrate total down to a moderate 100 to 150 grams per day will help put a stop to the insidious weight gain associated with insulin resistance. Use the 80-20 rule. Strive for 100% compliance with the understanding that 80% is more realistic. Enjoy life, accept compromises, reject obsessive mentality. Figure out what is important to you. What kind of life do you want? What kind of body fat percentage do you want? What are your fitness athletic goals? What familial gene risk factors do you have? And do you want an effortless relationship with food? Be really clear about your health, wellness, and happiness goals. And strive for a level of perfection that lines up with that. The exercise pyramid. Change the way you look at exercise. It's not about burning off the food you've eaten. We know that now. Make exercise about fitness. The components of fitness include things like endurance, strength, power, speed, agility, balance, coordination, reaction time, mobility and flexibility, and body composition. The amazing human animal should be all of these things, not just any one of these things. This is why a tunnel-visioned approach to fitness is not recommended. If you only run, you'll only be good at running. If you only lift heavy, you'll only be good at lifting heavy. If you only do Orange Theory, you'll only be good at Orange Theory. Variety is the spice in life, and always remember, inconsistency is key. This entire presentation has been about getting back to our evolutionary roots to help simplify the role food and lifestyle should play in creating and maintaining our optimal human experience. The same is true of exercise. We can look to the way of our ancestral humans moved in their day-to-day life. Lots of downtime. A good portion of the day was spent relaxing. In light of long, slow, and frequent non-exercise movement, hunting and gathering required a lot of walking. Not only that, but our ancestors just kept busy, performing the busy work associated with running a tribe. Even our great-great-great-grandparents spent a lot of time moving. They didn't sit all day only to get in their car and drive to the gym to bang out a 45-minute effort in spin class. Lifting, manual labor was the order of the day, and our species evolved to lift and carry heavy things from time to time. All-out sprint efforts, if a prey animal was on the horizon, or a predator animal had us in its sights, our forebears had to be able to move very quickly, but only long enough to catch dinner, or to avoid being dinner themselves. Lifestyle, healthy and happy. Contrary to what you may read on fitness and health pages online, there's a lot more to life than diet and exercise. In fact, the very notion that our human experience can be boiled down food and fitness is almost heartbreaking. Don't forget to emphasize the factors that enable us to be the wise, evolved animals we're meant to be. Lots of relaxation, doing nothing, slow life down, play. It's okay to do nothing. It's okay to goof off. It's okay to take it easy. In fact, your brain needs it. Social connections, reconnect with people. At the very least, consider putting your phone away from time to time. Manage chronic stress. Look, your stressors are real, but the assault of chronic stress is at the heart of nearly every metabolic disease our culture is being plagued with. Take stock of the things in your life that are chronically applying stress and figure out which pieces you can own and potentially take control over. Learn how you respond to stress and work out a way to manage your reactions. Sleep quality and quantity. The average human needs between 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. You may think you thrive on 5 or 6, but you also may have downregulated just how darn tired you are all the time. Try to get a good quality sleep each night. Practice good sleep hygiene to ensure you're setting the stage for the highest quality, most restful sleep you can get. Sensible sun exposure. Vitamin D deficiency is linked to many of our chronic health issues. In fact, there is research to support that the rate of cancers linked to vitamin D deficiency greatly outnumber the number of cancers relating to sun exposure. The best way to get vitamin D is from the sun, and the most sensible way to do that is a moderate amount of sun exposure most days of the week. For those living in cloudy, wintry climates, supplement. The skin cancer risk from sun exposure is heightened by sunburn, and getting a moderate amount of sunlight daily will actually help protect you against that risk. What we've encouraged here are just some simple shifts in food, exercise, and lifestyle. We haven't prescribed any pills or potions. We haven't sold you any products to try. The recommendations herein are whole, healthy, and based on our evolutionary biology. You have almost nothing to lose. Try it for 21 days and see how you can rewire yourself for optimal human badassery. Reprogram your genes, become a fat-burning beast, build, maintain lean muscle, stabilize energy and appetite, boost your immune and digestive function, decrease inflammation, and improve blood pressure, blood glucose, blood lipids, libido. It goes on and on. It's time to take charge of your own life. Optimize your human experience.